Rag rugs are a fun and easy craft to make, and something where we can use lots of strips of fabric and make a beautiful functional product at the same time. Using the Rag Rugs booklet, full of really neat instructions, and the tool that comes with it, I'm going to show you how we can make a really neat rag rug today just using simple strips cut from fabric scraps. To start out, we need to join our two pieces of fabric together. And in order to do that, I'm going to cut a small slit in each of the pieces. I'm folding the fabric up about 1 inch and just trimming a 1/2 inch so we have a 1-inch slot. And the book does an outstanding job of detailing how we join these together. But basically we're layering the two of them together and then taking the fabric that is on the top, which in this case is my white fabric. I'm going to grab the other end and feed it through this slit. And we're going to go ahead and just work it through and then give it a quick twist and pull, and we've got the two strips joined together in a knot. In order to start out making our rag rug, we've got two pieces of fabric that we're going to be working with. We're going to have a base strip and a knotting strip. In this case, I'm going to use the blue fabric as my base strip, and the white fabric is going to be my knotting strip. To make it easier to have an extra set of hands, I'm going to put a safety pin right here in the end of the knot. And I'm actually going to pin that, in this case, onto my ironing board and just slide that in. Just that little bit is going to give us some stability to hold this as we're working with it. So our base strip is laid down and the white fabric is going to be our knotting strip. And I'm going to go to the other end of the knotting strip and feed this through the hole that's in the tool. I don't want to pull all the way through, but I want to give it enough so that it's not going to pull out on my first knot. Taking the fabric and looping it off to the left, I'm going to slide this tool underneath the base fabric and over the top of the knotting fabric. And what you're quickly going to see is that we're essentially tying a knot here. As I go ahead and pull this down, you can see the knot form here. As you're working with this, you're going to learn the exact degree that you're going to want to tighten these knots. The first time I did it, I tightened them a little too tight and then had to go back and loosen them. But we definitely want to make sure that we've got this loop available here, because as we're making our next row, we're going to need to be able to pass this tool through that loop. So we're going to continue on with our second knot, going under the base strip and over the knotting strip. And just give it a quick tug. And now we formed our second knot. And we're going to continue this process working down through, tying knots along our base strip with our knotting strip. And I'm kind of checking each time, just making sure that I can stick my finger into those knots so that I don't get them too tight. Depending on how long you want to make your rag rug will determine the number of knots that you need to tie. Obviously, the more knots you tie, the longer this base strip is going to be, and that'll be the larger that your rug is going to be. For our video today, I'm just going to make a short little strip, something that would be suitable kind of as a mug rug or a tiny placemat that we could use for even a cup of soup, some hot chocolate, cup of coffee, something while we're working, or even as a coaster while watching TV. As you notice, the fabric starts to tangle, and that's okay. It really doesn't affect the outcome as we're working with it. We just keep tying knots in the same process of working our way down, going under our base strip, and over our knotting strip. And when you get to your desired length, I'm shooting for 6 inches, and with one more knot, I'm going to be right where I want to be. So we're going to finish tying our last knot on the first row. And just for reference point, I'm going to go back and count the number of knots that I tied. We've got 1 here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. As a novice on my first piece, I found this really helpful when I was going back and working with my second row to know how many knots I had tied on the previous row so that I could make sure I went through each one of those loops. In order to tie the second row, what we're going to do is unpin the fabric, and we're going to flip this entire piece from right over to the left. So now we've got our base strip oriented off to the right, and our knotting strip is here at the top. In order to give myself a little bit of a couple extra sets of hands, I'm using a couple pins just to secure this into my ironing board that I'm working on today. As we get ready to start our second row, we're going to want to take our base strip and bring it back across the top so that it is lying above the row of knots that we tied previously in our first row. And again, using our tool, we're going to come around to the left. We're going to slide this into the first knot that we tied. So this is why I wanted to make sure we didn't tie that first knot too tight, because we need to be able to get the width of the tool through there. And as we're going through, we're going underneath our previous knot and underneath our base strip, but coming out on top of our knotting strip. I know that's a lot to understand and take in at one time. So we're going to be going under, and on top. And we're going to continue just to pull that up. And the same process again for our next knot that we tied in the first row, under, and on top. As you can see, we're starting to get a little bit short on our knotting strip. And this is really easy to remedy by adding another knotting strip to it. I'm going to slide the tool off the end, flip this up just like we did the first time, and using our scissors, cut up about 1/2 inch. And then we'll do the same process on our next white strip. As we layer these together, we've got our strip layered together, and we've got the cut slit right here. I'm going to grab the opposite tail of my top strip and pull it through. And that will allow me to quickly and easily knot those two strips together. Then we'll go back to the other end, feed that through our tool, and be ready to continue. And it's the same knotting process over and over again. Where we've tied our previous knot, we're going to feed our tool underneath the previous knot, the base strip, but then over the knotting strip. And if you remember, we tied 9 knots in our first row. So I want to make sure that in our second row, we're also tying 9 knots. When we get to this knot, I'm just going to go ahead and snug him right in there where we join those two strips together. And when we get finished, nobody will even know where that knot is at. Sometimes we have to dig a little bit to find the knot from our previous row. But we're going to go under the base strip, and then over the knotting strip. And we're going to continue this process working down through all of the knots that were tied in the first row to create the second row. Once you get your 9 knots tied, we want to go through and do one final knot at the very end just to secure that row. So I'm tying this last knot right here, and then we want to do just a base knot going underneath the base strip and tying off right there. And then we're going to repeat this same process of flipping the entire unit from the right to the left and continue on with our next row. After we finish tying all of our rows, I'm now at about approximately 6-inch square, which is going to be the perfect size that I want to use for this little coaster, mug rug, soup mat, whatever we want to call it. Something that's going to be perfect right beside my desk. In order to finish it off, I am going to add a border all the way around it. So after I've tied that last knot in the last row, I want to rotate this to the right, and keeping my base strip oriented in the same way that we have before, just go ahead and tie knots all the way around. And this is going to provide a nice, neat, even finish on the edges. You can use any colors of fabric that you want. I used 2 contrasting fabrics here, the blue and white, to make it easy for us to see and follow along today, so you would know which is your knotting strip and which is your base strip as we were working through the process of tying the knots. Scrappy rugs are simply beautiful, using a wide variety of colors. You'll see little bits peeking out here and there from the base strips, and see larger color variations through with the knotting strips. Once you get to an ending point on your rag rug, we've got 2 different finishing options. One is to take the 2 strips and simply tie them together in a knot to secure it, and then trim the ends. And then after doing that, we can simply weave these ends back in underneath so that they're not going to fray out. I went ahead and did the white one first, and now I'm going to follow up with the blue one, working it back through the previously tied knots so that we've got those ends tucked and secure. And regardless of which side we look at, we can see both the blue and white showing through. As you can see, making a rag rug is something that is simple and very easy to do. This would be a perfect craft project, not only for adults, but also for kids as part of a camp setting. By using the tool that's provided with the booklet, it makes it very easy for you to tie the knots in this quick and easy no-sew project where you can make a rag rug as large as you would like. I hope you have as much fun working with rag rugs as I did. I know I learned a lot in this video and can't wait to make my next one.